Iowa's News Now Sports has your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks, sponsored by University of Iowa Healthcare.
We want our 10th win. They want to be bowl eligible, so it should be a big game.
We're still a week from the Big Ten championship game, but there's still a Heroes Trophy to get settled between now and Indianapolis. It's our last regular season Eye on the Hawks, and joining us this week is a man who just freed up some time on his schedule, Jason Dumont. Jason, appreciate you coming into the studio this holiday weekend. Appreciate you having you with us. Now, he just stepped down as Regina's head football coach, but before that, Jason, you were a defensive lineman at Iowa in the early 90s. Is that right?
I was, from 88 to 92. Yeah.
88 to 92. Great years there with the Hawkeyes, played in a couple big bowl games during that time. Now, what's your involvement with the program now? Are you in Kinnick most Saturdays?
Maybe more so now that I'm done coaching. I mean, coaching high school football doesn't leave a lot of free time. So I do make it over to 2 or 3 games. I was over at the game last weekend to watch. So get there when I can.
Just give us an early assessment. I mean, if you were to grade this team, on a traditional school scale, A to F, I mean, how would you grade the Hawkeyes this year?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, they're 9-2, and they're a punt return away from being 10-1, Big Ten West champs. So you got to get them a pretty good grade, right? What I saw Saturday was an offensive line that is starting to get some games under its belt and some experience under the belt. They're not running as much zone. They're still a zone team, but you're seeing a lot of block down, kick out, counters, and some ISO stuff. And I think you're seeing an improvement there where now they're able to throw the ball a little bit more. It's tough to throw the ball when you're on your back, and that offensive line, I think, is really starting to gel.
We're talking about Nebraska this week. You wouldn't have played against Nebraska in your time at Iowa, but you grew up not too far from Iowa City. One of Hayden Fry's first really big landmark wins was against Nebraska in 1981. Do you remember that game over there from Wellman?
Well, let's see. I would have been 11 years old. And, of course, we grew up with Coach Fry and the American Needs Farmers, and I grew up on a farm during the farm crisis. That was really important to us. But I do remember when we walked out of the tunnel on the other side of Kinnick before the remodel, that football was there, that game football with the score. I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was, this is a turning point in Iowa football. So if you played football in the late 80s, early 90s, you certainly knew about that Nebraska game because you saw it every time you walked out of the tunnel to go play.
Well, that road to 10 wins got a lot harder when Cooper DeJean went down in practice last week, out for the season, possibly done as a Hawkeye. He's projected as a first-round pick in the NFL draft in the spring. This week we spoke with some of his fellow defensive teammates about how they're supporting Cooper through his injury.
He's a tough soldier. And he said he's doing well. He has family taking care of him. I feel as though it's a good time that, we continue to check up on him. But at the end of the day, I have full confidence that he's going to be back, same old Cooper.
It's one of the guys I'm close with on the team, so just trying to help him through the injury. It's tough to see him go down, but really just staying close. He's a big part of the team still, helping guys with film and just critiquing little details, so he's just been huge for the DB room especially.
It was hard. I mean, honestly, it was. It was hard. You got to go up to him. You don't really know what exactly to say. I mean, it's a guy who lives for competition, lives to be on the field, lives to try to help his team win in any way possible. You just let him know you're thinking about him. Let him know you love him, and just know that you're here for him and anything he needs. And his career is far from over.
Jason, you're a defensive guy who's watched this team a whole lot. How special of a player is Cooper? How much does he mean to that defense?
Well, I tell you what, it's not just that. It's what he does on special teams. As Kirk said, he's probably one of the best players Coach Ferentz has been around his whole career. And listen, at the end of the day, and I'm sure this has been the discussion, there's not another Cooper DeJean walking in the door tomorrow, right? They've got to figure out a way to win without him. And, the good thing about football is there's 11 guys on the field. Now, obviously, Cooper is an impact player. But, at the end of the day, if they're all doing their jobs, and I thought Lee did a nice job last week, I'm sure Coach Parker has some adjustments. There's probably some certain defenses he may or may not want to call without him in there. But at the end of the day, there's 10 other guys on the field, and, if they pick it up this much, everything will be fine. I think really where you'll miss him maybe more is on the special teams. And I think you saw that a little bit last week. A couple balls got away from him that probably don't if Cooper's in there. But once again, that's just game experience.
Any chance, I don't know if you've ever even met Cooper, I don't know if you even feel qualified to say, but do you think there's any chance that Hawkeye fans will see him back here in a Hawkeye uniform next season, or is he going to be playing in the league next year?
Yeah, I tell you what, he's probably a first-round lock, right? And that's tough to turn down that money.
Exactly.
And God bless him for everything he's done for the Hawkeyes. And is there a better program in the country finding these 2-star kids and turning them into NFL players? I don't think I think you'd have a hard time finding more guys in the NFL from another school that weren't 4- and 5-star kids. But yeah, he needs to go get paid.
The next man in mentality, that's become the mantra of this year's Hawkeye team. Injuries to key players at quarterback, tight end, cornerback, wide receiver, and on the offensive line have pressed a lot of backups into duty, including Ellsbury, who's been with the program since 2020, but only now with an injury to Logan Jones has he stepped in to play significant snaps at center.
It's definitely been fun to be able to step in with my teammates and perform. Obviously Logan's a great player, and when he's ready to play, he'll play. But it's definitely been special. He helps me along just like I help him along and other things, and we all work really well together. So it's been a great time playing with him.
Hopefully he's seeing himself for himself that he can do this, because I think there's a little shadow of doubt somewhere in the back there. And at some point you got to get in the water and swim, and he's done that very, very well. And it's a tough position to play. So just a lot of credit to him.
He hasn't, been dealt exactly the hand that I think he thought he would get coming in. It's his 4th year, and this is his first year actually getting significant playing time, honestly. And I'm just really proud of him and how he stepped in at center and stuff like that. We got more to do, but obviously up to this point, I've been really proud of this group.
Jason, I didn't realize this until you walked into the studio that Tyler's older brother was on your staff over there at Regina. So you maybe watched his kid's career a little bit closer than a lot of people have.
Yeah, watched it very closely, actually. His older brother, Dustin, who played at Co, has been on my staff over there for 4 years and is a great coach. So, yeah. And what's interesting is sometimes, and Coach just alluded to it, it's you got to throw him in, right? And he's getting put in there because of an injury, and it's sink or swim. And he seems to be swimming pretty well right now. And it's building that confidence level and actually getting in there in the fire and seeing your film. But I think it's more than just Ellsbury. I really think it's all of the offensive line. And then you throw in Brown and some of the other guys who haven't got a lot of playing time. And it seems to be gelling a little bit. Now, maybe I get proven wrong Friday. They're going to have their hands full with Nebraska, of course. But it certainly, offensively, things certainly look better than they did 3 or 4 weeks ago.
I'm so appreciative that Phil's been here all this time, and can't say enough about the job he does. If he was here right now, he'd tell you it's his whole staff, and that's true too.
The defense is dominated for what feels like an eternity. The common denominator for many years, it's been Phil Parker, a Frank Broyles Award semifinalist. Kirk Ferentz takes us back to some early memories of Phil. That's next on Eye on the Hawks.
It's 15 really, high-quality coaches, so just happy to see Phil and the job he's done for a long, long time be recognized, and keep our fingers crossed on that one.
25 years Phil Parker has been with the Iowa football team. The man's only worked for 2 programs over the last 35 years, and this week he was named one of 15 semifinalists for the Frank Broyles Award given to the best assistant coach in college football. This week Kirk Ferentz spoke about his very first memories of Phil when he would have been a defensive back at Michigan State.
When I was an assistant here in the 80s, certain guys just kind of jump out at you, players. And Michigan State was a team I was in charge of scouting, but he was a smart player, a tough player. He was a 3-time All-Big Ten player, and that's really hard to do. Guys throw terms around. There aren't many guys that were 3-time All-Big Ten. And, I don't think he was a combine guy, but, boy, he was a football player. I didn't hire Norm with this in mind, but after we made the decision to make Norm our coordinator, we started talking about secondary coaches, first position you talk about, and he brought up Phil's name, and I was like, let's I'm all for it. Let's bring him in here. Long story short, we've had 2 coordinators in 25 years. You got 100-plus players, so if you don't have a strong staff, you're dead in the water. And Phil's been great as an assistant. He's the best secondary coach I've ever worked with, bar none. And now as a coordinator, he's been fantastic.
Jason Dumont back with us on Eye on the Hawks. Can't imagine a better guest to bring in for this question specifically. You were a defensive coordinator for many years over there at Regina. Give me your assessment of Phil Parker and how he's been able to keep this unit so strong every year as one of the best in America.
Yeah, I think this is his 2nd year nominated for this award.
Yep.
I think what's most impressive, especially the last 2 years, it's not like he's been getting a ton of offensive help, right? So it's not like he's been getting 10, 11, 15 play drives. Where the defense has been able to come off and rest. There's been a lot of 3-and-outs or 6-and-out type situations. So many times this defense is turning around in a pretty big hurry and getting back on the field. and he's really kind of set the standard here. And Kirk mentions having a great staff. I remember Coach Fry's defensive coordinator that whole time there was Bill Brazier, and that consistency that he had in the staff and the consistency that Kirk's been able to have in the staff. I know that's got to be a pretty big peace of mind for him, knowing he has them on the other side of the ball.
Well, Iowa hasn't lost at Memorial Stadium since the first Heroes game back in 2011. They're 5-0 on the road against Nebraska since then. Mitch Fick is catching up with former Hawkeye receiver Matt Vandenberg about what it's like to leave Lincoln with a win.
You finally get that win in their house too, and I imagine that they're getting 70,000 strong to cheer for you at Kinnick is one thing. Getting 90,000 to be quiet Memorial is another. What is that moment like when the Heroes Trophy makes its first trip to Iowa City?
I'd like to say that that's kind of the start of Kinnick West instead of like the Memorial Stadium. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible. Anytime you get a win, is really big. But there's also extra nuance to it. So I had a buddy that I played high school against. His name was Nate Gary. He goes on to the University of Nebraska, and so it was kind of like I don't want to call it sibling rivalry, but like he went to a rival high school of mine. So like it was always that little added thing of wanting to compete a little harder.
You end up 4-1 against Nebraska. As a kid from around that area, boy, that had to feel good, especially when you already didn't really like the fan base growing up to be able to
say, yeah.
walk out.
They kind of made their bed so they had to sleep in it as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, it was a lot different, in 2017. So it was a different quarterback, different position. I was playing an X position, which is usually reserved for bigger guys, not necessarily my skill type. But just based on the personnel we had on the team, that's where I fit. Brian's first year as OC, so we were still trying to figure out a lot of different things. So knowing that there was a lot of difference going into that game, to put up 50 is pretty incredible.
We'll have a special Eye on the Hawks conversation with Matt dropping on Friday wherever you listen or watch this show.
They haven't been to a bowl game, right? A long time, I guess. I don't know how long it's been, but they're playing like a bowl team right now. They're playing really well.
7 years since the last time Nebraska played in a bowl game. Their bowl win last year was keeping Iowa out of a Big Ten title game. A shot of redemption for Iowa on Friday. We'll break down the Heroes Trophy game next on Eye on the Hawks. Big Red, desperate to play postseason football once again. Curtis Fader is in the studio to break down some of the pitfalls awaiting Iowa at Memorial Stadium this Saturday.
Nebraska and Iowa are alike in many ways stylistically as a team, and these Cornhuskers are a lot better than what the team's record shows. 4 of Nebraska's losses were by 1 score, 3 of them by 3 points or fewer, and the 4th being an overtime loss to Wisconsin this past weekend. Like Iowa, the Cornhuskers have had some growing pains on offense, subpar quarterback play across the board this season. The team has used 3 different quarterbacks this year that could potentially start against the Hawkeyes, but last week the team got a bit of a spark out of a familiar name, Chubba Purdy, younger brother of Brock Purdy, 3rd on the depth chart, running scout team 2 weeks ago, but put together a solid performance with his arm and legs against Wisconsin. Nebraska has given up on average less than 19 points per game this season and is not afraid of playing a gritty slugfest for a ball game. Probably also why the initial over-under betting line is set for a staggeringly low 27.5 points. While there may not be the highest of stakes in the grand scheme of the 2023 regular season, a good offensive performance like the Rutgers game a couple weeks ago can build major confidence for the team going into Lucas Oil Stadium the following week.
And not a bad way to spend the holidays. Well, Jason, this Iowa team has been through so much this year. Injuries, you had everything surrounding the Noah Shannon gambling situation, the Brian Ferentz saga. How has this team been able to hold it all together and manage to get to this point where they're on the verge of getting 10 wins this year?
It looks to me like they've rallied around Brian. If you look at what's going on the sideline and after the game, I think it's unfortunate he was let go in the middle of the season. No matter what you think Brian's a good coordinator, a bad coordinator, I think Kirk has the right to pick his own staff, and I think it's unfortunate that he was let go, especially in the middle of the season like that. I'm willing to pick your brain on that and hear what you got to say about that, just because it sounds like, I'm sure obviously Kirk was not happy with the way that things went down, but as a coach too, again, from your perspective, maybe wasn't handled the way things should have been handled. I think, at the end of the day, listen, you've got the Dean of Big Ten coaches. Did he just pass Bo Schembechler in wins, or just tied him or passed him? I think it's very disrespectful that you let his offensive coordinator go in the middle of the season like that. And if you want to have some hard discussions about it after the season, I think that's perfectly legitimate. But I don't think it was handled well at all.
Yeah, I know that if I'm playing devil's advocate here, I know that a big reason why has to be the transfer portal. I mean, just knowing that there are guys who are going to want to be coming in, or possibly Iowa guys who are going to be leaving. Yeah. Do you think that that's the biggest thing that played a factor in this? Just kind of the new landscape of college football and NIL, transfer portal, all that stuff.
Well, I don't know. I think it can also go the other direction, and it can be a negative as well. Yep. Of well, who is going to be the offensive coordinator, and what is the system going to be? What system am I going to be playing under? And so I think it can also go the other direction. And you look at the way the guys have rallied around Brian here the last couple of games. They like him, yep. Right? When you're dumping a Gatorade on your OC, they like Brian. Yeah. So whatever's happening around the peripheral really doesn't matter. It matters what's going on inside that room. And they've rallied around their coach.
Still more Hawkeye content after the break, a life update for Coach Dumont, and we pick some game picks for this final week of the regular season. Stay with us here on Eye on the Hawks. Jason Dumont back with us to close up shop on Eye on the Hawks. Jason, before we go, I want to hear about your recent decision to step away from coaching at Regina. What's next on the table for you?
Time will tell, or I've got plenty of things to do. My son Gentry will have an opportunity to play somewhere. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to go and watch those games and be part of that experience. It was a great 17-year run as a high school coach, as an assistant head coach. I couldn't have asked for anything better. It was just time with him graduating to step away from the game for a little bit here and see where the paths lead me.
All right, well, let's get to our Week 13 game picks. Only 2 regular season weeks left for the Hawkeyes. First, we've got the battle for the Axe. 2 of Iowa's biggest rivals facing off against each other. With a win, Minnesota can become bowl eligible. They're also trying to battle the Badgers for the third straight year. Beat the Badgers for the third straight year. The last time the Gophers did that was '87, Wisconsin, a 2-point favorite. Who do you like in this one, Jason?
I like Wisconsin. They're coming off a big overtime win last week, yep. And Minnesota's been struggling here lately. I'm going to take the Badgers.
Yeah, Wisconsin's underperformed a little bit the last few weeks, but you got to think they've got the talent to beat this Minnesota team. Yeah. Next, the game on Fox 28 at noon on Saturday. Biggest game in the Big Ten this season, maybe the biggest game in college football this year. Second-ranked Ohio State traveling to the Big House to take on Michigan. Both teams 11-0. Winner gets Iowa in the Big Ten title game next week in Indy. Right now, Michigan a 3.5-point favorite. Jason, who would you like to see Iowa play in that game, Ohio State or Michigan?
Boy, we probably Michigan maybe.
Okay.
Just a good old Iowa-Michigan showdown.
Yep.
But I'm going to take the Buckeyes to go in there. They've been had a tight game with Rutgers. They've been tested a little bit. I say they go in there and upset the Wolverines.
Not a lot of people have been able to keep up with Marvin Harrison Jr. this year. Well, now back to the Black Friday clash between the Big Ten West champion Iowa Hawkeyes and the Huskers. Nebraska needing a win to play in a bowl game. Iowa trying for its 10th win. Nebraska favored actually right now by 1.5. I assume you're going to pick the Hawkeyes to win this one, but do they win comfortably, or is this maybe just a 1-2 point game again?
I'm going with 2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns.
Here's the thing. If we can stop the running game, and you just got to keep Purdy in the pocket, mm-hmm. Right? If you keep Purdy in the pocket, he's going to throw up some picks.
Yep. Yeah. This Nebraska team is prone to turnovers, big time, interceptions and fumbles, and so you could see that.
You just contain him. He's going to throw the ball up. We'll get a few.
Yeah. Well, that does it for Week 13 of Eye on the Hawks. Scan the QR code on the screen to download, subscribe, and listen to the Eye on the Hawks podcast. We have a preview podcast up and also an extended version of the show that you're watching right now, ready for download. It's available wherever you get your podcast. Since this week's game is on Friday, we're planning to bring our reaction podcast to you on Saturday. Check out our Twitter account at Eye on the Hawks for details on the stream, and you can join or send along questions. You can follow along at Iowa's News Now on YouTube. We'll send out the link from our Eye on the Hawks Twitter account. We want to thank Jason Dumont again for coming in and joining us in the studio on the holiday week.
Thanks.
Enjoy the holidays. Happy Thanksgiving, and enjoy the game on Friday.